IVP. So Ms. Downhour, we'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Finance Committee for April 27th, 2020. The Finance Committee is officially called to order at 6:03. And the first resolution to come before the Finance Committee is Resolution 64-20. It's a resolution to adopt City of Lancaster policies regarding federal grants. And from what I read, it's to be able to develop policies around being able to accept federally awarded grants. It is a requirement. Mayor Scheffler, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to my statement or not.
I don't have anything to add. Trish or Paul may. This is something that I think the state auditor required. Isn't that right, Trish?
Yeah, you're correct. State audit required in our last year's management letter. Notice that we didn't have a formal policies and procedures for accepting and maintaining federal grants. So that was part of our management letter last year of stating that we needed to get something in place. And this is kind of what we put together. Randall's reviewed it and gone through it, and Randall's submitted it for me on my behalf to make the state auditors happy.
Okay, Ms. Downhour, you're still muted. Oh, there you go.
Okay. I'm showing that this will have 2 readings. Is that still okay, Trish? Okay. And Mr. Stoughton, will you second?
I will.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions before we move on to the next resolution? Okay, not seeing any. Temporary resolution 65-20. This is a resolution to authorize all action necessary to accept a Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, or NOPEC, 2020 Energized Community Grant, and to declare an emergency. I believe we talked about this at one of the other city council meetings this year, that NOPEC had a grant, and this is actually to allow the city to enter into a grant agreement with NOPEC. Mayor Scheffler, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, every year, as a result of being an aggregator, each municipality that gets a grant based on a certain dollar amount.
I'm showing that this will have.
Everybody still there? Anyway, we get a grant every year for a certain dollar amount based on the number of subscribers that Lancaster has. And this is going to be something we have to do every year. It has to be used for an energy-related project in the community. And our intention is to use this to replace the boiler in the police department headquarters, which is the original boiler when the building was built, and has been nothing but a headache to Chief Pilar and Paul over the last few years. It breaks down constantly. I think we had to spend about $10,000 in maintenance on it last year. And this would be a great use for those funds. We have to have the resolution to give to NOPEC to authorize them paying us the grant. Then we have to go through the process to submit our project to them for reimbursement. Any questions?
That boiler is not going to be cheap. They'll cover the whole thing. Help me understand this.
Our grant, Chief Pilar is in the process of updating the proposals that we had, which are a couple years old now. Is that right, Chief?
Yeah, I called them Friday, so they're going to update it. The one I have is from 2017, and I believe it was around $82,000. I got it here. I'll find it for you real quick.
Yeah, and the grant is for $84,000 this year, so it should be close.
Okay. Good.
Any other questions?
Okay, I have this as one reading. So we'll be asking for suspension on this tonight. And Mrs. Bobbitt, would you be my second? Okay, she's still on mute. Oh, all right. Okay, we only had 2 resolutions to come before finance. Did I miss anything, Teresa? Okay, all right. I'm actually going to defer over to Mr. Stoughton as he has some follow-up questions from our last meeting.
Thank you. So earlier, around 4 o'clock today, I sent you all a copy of the Municipal League Legislative Bulletin. I don't know if you get that. If you don't, you should sign up for that because they send out lots of updates. I would just call your attention to a couple things in there that really talk about the CARES Act and the fact that on page, if you print this on page 2, it just reminds you that funds may not be used to fill shortfalls in government revenue to cover expenditures that would not otherwise qualify under the statute. We had heard, I think last week, that potentially there was going to be a way to, for lack of a better term, remove restrictions on how some of that CARES money could have been used at the local level, since there's be about what 1.2 billion, I think, in Ohio, if my numbers are right, available. But that has not been changed. Congress has not changed that. So while the CARES money might help us for true COVID-19 expenses, it's not going to help us on a revenue shortfall. And then if on page 3 of that same report from the Municipal League, it's the update on the financial relief lobbying effort. I know I sent a crap load of faxes last week on Thursday to the Ohio delegation. Have called, talked, faxed, emailed, texted anyone that would listen in the Ohio delegation to basically continue lobbying on our behalf. And if you have an opportunity to do that, I would encourage you to do that as well. I can assure you that Mayor Scheffler is leaving no stone unturned as well. We've talked a few times along the way. My understanding is, Senate Majority Leader McConnell basically called for pushing the pause button, which is kind of where we are at the moment. I don't have any new information from today, so Mayor Scheffler, you might have some fresher information that maybe you can share from that perspective, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Well, let me kind of start with the big picture. We've got plenty of time here since our council meeting can't start till 6:30. So the Ohio Municipal League estimates that the shortfall for cities will be somewhere around 10 to 20% of revenue for income taxes, which would amount to somewhere between $2 and $4 million for us. I have asked all the department heads for revised budgets from what council approved in December with a 10% cut, and I have received all of them, and so we are poised to go into action if we need to do that. However, every indication is that assistance is coming, from Trump tweets to Nancy Pelosi on State of the Union yesterday to all of our senators and representatives all assure us that help is coming. Actually, last week on Monday, the bill passed the Senate on Tuesday. On Monday, there were 3 different versions of aid to cities from Monday morning to Monday evening to Tuesday morning. And as of 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, there was a provision in phase 3.5 to get money to the cities. I was on a conference call with the Ohio Mayors Alliance and the U.S. Conference of Mayors at 10 o'clock, and we all believed that it was going to pass as part of phase 3.5. For some reason, it got pulled right before the vote. but every indication we have is that they will take that up on Monday when they reconvene. Monday, May 4th, Congress is actually going to reconvene and it will be taken up. McConnell seems to be the only one dragging his feet. His stated reason is he doesn't want to bail out the blue states who have spent themselves into almost oblivion. But it seems like all the balls are in the court to get something passed. And I can assure you that all the state and national mayors and commissioners and township trustees associations in the business community is lobbying hard to get something passed. And I know I sent out an email to all of you with the letter I sent asking you to do that. And I know at least some of you have, and I appreciate the effort, but it's not time to let up. Keep the pressure on. I've also asked many members of our business community here in Lancaster to write letters, make calls, send faxes or emails, and I've gotten feedback that a number of them have done the same thing. But, you know, so far they've bailed out the airlines, the universities, public transit, small business with forgivable loans. They sent $36 million to the citizens of Lancaster in the way of direct stimulus checks. And we need to leave no stone unturned here in getting this thing passed. The formulas that we've seen would generate anywhere from $3.5 to $7 million, depending on which option they choose. Tom is correct that the CARES Act money that came through, which was Ohio got $4.5 billion, 45% of that was allocated to cities. The cities and counties over 500,000 in population qualified for $800 million, which left $1.2 million for all the other cities. It is up to the state to distribute that and figure out what formula they're going to use to distribute it, except that it can only be used for direct COVID-related expenses that exceed past budgets. So to date, we don't qualify for a single penny, neither do most other cities in the state of Ohio. And for instance, as an example, the issue that we have 60-20 to appropriate additional overtime. In December, we approved overtime for the fire department for 12 months. And we are quickly eating into that because of all the overtime required, mainly because of the COVID virus. But we have not exceeded the budget that we passed in December. And you can only get reimbursed for amounts that exceed approved budgets. So we don't qualify for any. The easiest way for Congress to get money to us is to allow or direct the reuse of that CARES funding in the coronavirus relief fund to allow it to be used to replace city revenues. And the money's already appropriated. There's not a whole lot of use for it right now. We may exceed some of our approved budget in overtime and PPE at some time in the year, but we're not going to be able to make any use of it. So if they would repurpose it to allow it to be used for revenue replacement, that would be the easiest and I guess cheapest thing for them to do since they've already appropriated it. By the way, some of you know that public transit is going to get a nice little boost from the CARES Fund to help them defray their expenses for the rest of the year. So we were very happy about that. It was a happy and a sad moment. Frustration that the CARES Act took care of everybody except the cities, but we're going to get there sooner or later. Any questions?
So, Mayor Scheffler, to that regard, I'm just going to ask you to speak a little bit about process that we're preparing for in the event that we don't get any federal funding down to our level. So tell us what the process is, what if future meetings are going to be required by City Council. I know we meet next Monday, I believe, so that is timely. But if you just kind of take us through the process of what we have to do in the event that we actually have to move forward with furloughs.
Right. So there are a number of expenses that at least I believe can be cut as a result of administrative action. But there are certain payroll expenses that, because of collective bargaining agreements or civil service rules, that council has to act on. And the biggest and the most troubling, I guess, is to lay off city police officers. Council has to pass a resolution that authorizes them to be laid off, and it has to name the police officers in the legislation that are going to be laid off. Which I think personally would stir up a hornet's nest, and we don't need to do that right now. So at some point, if we decide that we're not going to get some assistance from Congress, then we may need to bring some legislation forward to council. We may, if it comes to it, have to act on short notice and call a special meeting. I think our two meetings in May are the 4th and the 18th, I believe. May's meetings were changed because of Memorial Day, so they're earlier than they typically are. So in a number of cases, unionized employees and civil service employees have to be given a 30-day notice to be laid off. So if we determine that no relief is coming, then we need to jump into action and get those things taken care of as soon as possible. Did that answer your question, Tom?
Well, it did. I just wanted to make sure that others could hear that, and if they had questions, because we're not acting because we're kind of in a waiting mode. And certainly, Paul, I am hopeful that in the next negotiation you will get that article struck from the contract to where you have to name names in the resolution. There's a reason they do that. So if you have any questions for the mayor, now would be a good time.
I know Mrs. Bobbitt had a question earlier that didn't deal specifically with this, but she asked me to talk about the group insurance situation. As you know, we discussed earlier that we needed to terminate our agreement with SCOIC, or SCOIC as it's commonly referred to in the insurance area, which we have done. We had to give a 6 months notice, which we did in December. And council approved a meeting or two ago to enter into a contract with CBIZ to help us select a new insurance provider, which we have done. United Healthcare will be our new health insurance provider, and Delta Dental will be the new dental insurance provider. We will be continuing, because our plan year runs through December, with the same premiums and same coverage that we had before, but we'll be looking to change plans and premiums that employees pay and the city pays come January 1st of 2021. Any questions about that, or any of the other things that we talked about? Melody, you're muted if you want to.
We can't hear you, Mel.
You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted right now. Okay, so United Healthcare will be our coverage right now then. So
July 1st. Yeah. Well, we are working our way through all the details of the contract and the coverages. I think Gretchen has a 4-hour phone conference scheduled with them sometime this week to cover all the details and make sure we understand, the idiosyncrasies of their contract versus what we've had in the past.
So since we're self-insured, will Trish Nettles now be issuing these checks from her office? That would be one of my questions.
No, they would still come. United Healthcare would be the administrator, and it would operate pretty much the same way that our current coverage does, just like, any other insurance coverage. except that we're self-insured up to the first 150,000, and there's reinsurance on top of that through another company, but United Healthcare would be the administrator. Trish, you have any additional comments about that?
Because we're currently self-insured, this is just going to a different and still being self-insured. This one is my understanding that third party will still pay the claims, and then we will then in turn reimburse that third party their expenses based upon our what we remove employee and employer. So it'll be them writing the checks to the physician and then us reimbursing them their costs.
Yeah, they have, we had 3 or 4 different plans to choose from, and the network that United Healthcare has and their administrative cost was certainly the most attractive. Also, Delta Dental has a very robust network of dentists that our employees can take advantage of, which not only is good coverage, but the network provides a significant discount over what our employees hadn't realized in the past.
When will you be able to determine how much we have saved to make this change, going to CBiz instead of staying with, somebody local, and then also staying with the consortium that was all local?
Well, we already know that the administrative cost through United Healthcare is less than the consortium. So it also depends on what plan and coverages we select starting in 2021. So one of the issues we have is, I think you're all aware that we have a reserve, which the consortium wanted us to build up or maintain at something over $2 million. And we've had 3 or 4 cases that were heavy draws on that reserve. And as of the end of February, it got down to a few $100,000. March was better. Obviously, elective surgeries started to peel off in March as the governor prohibited any elective surgeries, and April should be even better since there are literally no surgeries in April. So we hope to build that back up, because at the end of our contract with SCOIC, we have to pay out the following claims that are coming in for April, May, and June that don't get filed until after July 1st. So we have some liability. One of the good things about United Healthcare, at least initially, we only have to have $50,000 in reserve that's deposited in a bank account. So that's a big help to us too.
We only have to have 50,000. I know when you had talked to us before, and you just mentioned it just right now. I mean, we've got some heavy hitters that I guess I can call it that. I mean, we have some expenses that's being pulled away. So is there any assurance that we have that we're only going to have that 50,000 reserve?
Well, that's what we have to have on deposit in an account as a reserve. And as Trish said, we will be paying. We will be reimbursing the insurance company for their disbursements for coverage. One of our heavy hitters has dropped off, and another one was released from the hospital recently. So we're hoping that those high dollar claims are going to fall off pretty significantly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you, Mary. I appreciate that update. Just one final thing. Tonight, we're considering passage of $200,000 of general fund money for firefighter overtime. I've asked Holly, and I think we concur that we're just going to have second reading on that tonight. The fact is we still have $150,000 remaining in appropriated money. we probably shouldn't be doing any appropriations of anything until we know exactly if we're going to get some relief or not. So I hope you all will see it that way. I'm not a fan of appropriating money that we potentially don't have.
Yeah, reducing our minimum staffing to 14 to avoid overtime has had a positive impact on that overtime. And some of our firefighters who were suspected or confirmed of having the virus are back to work or will be back to work within a few days. So
good,
trending in the right direction.
Good. And Chief Ward, thank you for the update you sent around 4 o'clock today. I appreciate that. Holly, that's all I have.
Okay, great. Moving on to departmental updates. Do we have any departmental updates? I don't hear anybody. That's good. President Uhl, do you have anything for tonight's meeting prep?
Yeah, it looked like Carrie was going to say something for departmental updates. Carrie, are you unmuted now?
Can you hear me?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, I'll try and get closer. I just wanted to touch on the mayor's comment about some additional funding coming through the CARES Act strictly for public transit. What we found out is we will be getting some funding. We don't have the exact dollar amount yet. We are waiting on a contract to come through ODOT with being a 5311 rural transit system. Everything that we get federally comes through ODOT as a pass through. We do think that it means that we will get reimbursed 100% of the rest of our expenditures for the rest of the year. And they are also going to be giving us some additional funding. I know Ms. Downer Miller, I had sent you an email earlier and copied Corey and the Public Works Committee on that. But it will probably require us asking for additional funds to be budgeted in our 2020 budget. Probably it might be up to $150,000. And I just wanted to make you aware that that is most likely coming. And when it does come, we will probably have to request suspension to get it approved quickly, because I know ODOT is going to be in a hurry to get all of this approved, get the contracts ready, and be able to spend those funds so that they can reimburse us again at 100% of everything they are giving us. So just wanted to touch on that and let you know that that will be coming.
So Carrie, the additional appropriations will be coming through ODOT, right? Not from the city funds.
That is correct. Anything that comes from this point forward, any changes, any additional expenditures that we would be making or anything that we would be adding to our budget will be completely 100% reimbursed by ODOT funding. It will not cost the city anything. And that was my update.
Great, thank you. Are there any other departmental updates?
I lied. One more thing.
Okay.
I just wanted to publicly let you know that the Fairfield County EMA and John Coaches has been a tremendous, huge help to my department. If you've not worked with him in your own respective agencies or your own departments, he has helped me and my public transit drivers so much. He has provided us with N95 masks to make sure that our drivers are covered with masks. They've given us gloves to make sure that we have gloves. They've given us masks for our passengers, thermometers to check our staff temperatures. They have helped us so much over this last month, and I just really wanted to say thank you to him publicly and to let you know in case you talk to him. That way you can say thank you to him as well.
Will do. Thank you. No, Melody, I can't hear you.
Yeah, she's gesticulating around. Let's try it now.
I think I'm still muted.
There we go.
There, I'm not muted now. So maybe this question should be asked afterwards, but Carrie, since you're explaining this and since you're talking about the 150,000, so is there anywhere, Carrie and Mayor, is there any way that we could take this 150 and then the funds that we have from the general fund, give those funds back to the general fund? Or is it one of these things that you have to keep the budget the same as what it was?
So we've already discussed that. I already made that request, but it appears that we have to leave the 73,000 that we have appropriated to transit in transit. We can't bring it back into the general fund. That's a condition.
Okay.
That's a condition of the grants that they get, the regular state and federal grants that they get for operations.
Okay, thank you.
That's the first thing I thought of.
And I will.
Me too.
Well, and I will add, I did tell the mayor that if there's a way, for us to, put that money back in general fund, I will absolutely let him know as soon as we find out, and he'll get the contract stuff as well. But as of right now, the way they've requested is that we set up a separate revenue account under the transit fund that we put that we put our local match into a transit reserve fund to use in the future. But again, if that changes, then I'll definitely let you know, or the mayor will let you know.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Carrie or the mayor? Okay. Any other departmental updates? I don't see any. President Uhl, anything for tonight's meeting prep?
Thank you, Ms. Downhour. I'll just mention two quick things. We do need to have a discussion about how we're going to continue moving forward as the governor is beginning to reopen Ohio. I have some suggestions. Given the time, we will reserve that discussion for unfinished business during the regular council meeting. I'll also just quickly note that at the beginning of our broadcast tonight, there was an issue with the live stream online. So Spectrum was fine, and online you could hear, but the video was scrambled. Thanks to Bob Campetti, who quickly was able to fix that. It did require, though, that a new link be posted out. I believe that Bob posted out on the mayor's page, on the IVP page, and perhaps even on some of the other pages where there's lots of political discussion and talk on a regular basis. So hopefully people that were attempting to tune in via the original link will find the new link. But we remain in compliance, as both it was possible to hear our discussion even though it couldn't be seen, and two, we were broadcasting on Spectrum 1021 during that time. So with that, as far as meeting prep goes, I don't have anything else this evening for us as we continue forward.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other items for finance? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Probably got to unmute someone to make that happen.
I think Melody offered a motion. I'll second it.
Okay. We are adjourned at 6:36.
Very good. The regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin at approximately 6:40. Thank you.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from, so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
Almost everyone needs a car to get from point A to point B, and many families have 2 or more cars. At Carriage Company, located at 1031 North Memorial Drive in Lancaster, we specialize in hard-to-find used cars. We can help you find exactly what you're looking for.
Come into the Carriage Company and check out our sweet deals.
Stop by today and let us help you, or visit us online at carriagecompany.com.
Sweet!
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our 2 locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Alrighty, I think we are live. We are welcome to this meeting of Lancaster City Council. If you'll all join me once again this week, they're about to chew their arms off because it's after dinner time, but we're going to have Samantha and Ethan do the Pledge of Allegiance with us right after we begin with a word of prayer. So if you'll stand with me, we're going to have a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this day and your blessings. Thank you for all that you do and how you've continued to be with us and all that is happening. Father, we pray that you would continue to lead, guide, and direct us. May you give us wisdom as we go about the work that's set before us. May you continue to provide wisdom to those who are making decisions that impact all of us here in Ohio and across the country these days. And Father, finally, we ask that you would continue to be with those who have fallen ill, those who are constantly on the front lines as service and other things continue forward. And Father, our first responders as well, who continue to place themselves in harm's danger. May you continue to be with us, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Thank you. Very good. Thank you all. And now the kids have just run up the stairs yelling, "It is time for dinner." All right. With that, I'm going to unmute everyone. Hopefully we won't get any feedback here. For members of the administration, you'll be unmuted as well. If you want to click your mute button again, this is just the easy way to make sure as we go around and do roll call, everyone has the opportunity to chime in. And with that, we'll unmute and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Here.
Mrs. Downhour.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. James.
Here.
Mr. Matlin.
Here.
Mr. McDaniel.
Here.
Mr. Schoonover.
Here.
Mr. Stoughton.
Here.
And Mrs. Teener.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance this evening. We'll now ask the clerk to read the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated April 13th, 2020.
Ms. Bobbitt or Mr. Schoonover. There you go.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
Email dated April 15th, 2020 regarding the certified public records training submitted by Mr. Stoughton. Email dated April 15th, 2020 regarding certified public records training submitted by Mrs. Downhour. Email dated April 17th, 2020 regarding certified public records training submitted by Mrs. Teener. Email dated April 21st, 2020 regarding 1516 Graff Street submitted by Mr. Matlin. Series of emails regarding carryover cash guidelines submitted by Auditor Tricia Nettles. Email dated April 21st, 2020 regarding carryover cash guidelines submitted by Mr. McDaniel. Email dated April 22nd, 2020 regarding draft minutes submitted by Mr. Stoughton. Email dated April 22nd, 2020 regarding carryover cash guidelines submitted by Mr. Matlin. Email dated April 22nd, 2020 regarding 1516 Graff Street submitted by Mrs. Teener. Email dated April 24th, 2020 regarding Council and Finance Committee meeting submitted by President Ohl. Email dated April 24th, 2020 regarding COVID-19 economic and budgetary impacts submitted by Auditor Tricia Nettles. Email dated April 26th, 2020 regarding Finance Committee agenda submitted by Mrs. Downhour. Email dated April 27th, 2020 regarding May meeting cancellation submitted by Mr. James. Email dated April 27th, 2020 regarding May meeting cancellation submitted by Stormwater Manager Denise Cruz. Email dated April 27th, 2020 regarding LFD overtime submitted by Chief David Ward. Email dated April 27th, 2020 regarding LFD overtime submitted by Mr. Stoughton. And finally, an email dated April 27th, 2020 regarding Ohio Municipal League legislative bulletin submitted by Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you very much. Those were the reports of city officials. Mr. Schoonover?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
And I second that motion.
A motion and a second to receive and file the reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There are none to be presented.
There are no special presentations tonight. Are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
We have no taxpayers present with us this evening, so we'll move past that. Are there reports of standing committees?
I have one Finance Committee meeting minutes for April 13th, 2020 submitted by Mrs. Downhour.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
There are no public hearings scheduled tonight, so we'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the second reading of temporary resolution 60-20.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the general fund 101, offered by Mrs. Downhour, second by Mr. Stoughton.
Ms. Downhour.
Second of three readings, please.
Second reading on temporary resolution 60-20. We now have first reading on temporary resolution 64-20.
A resolution to adopt City of Lancaster policies regarding federal grants, offered by Mrs. Downhour, second by Mr. Stoughton.
Ms. Downhour.
First of two readings, please.
First reading on temporary resolution 64-20. Temporary resolution 65-20.
A resolution to authorize all actions necessary to accept a Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council NOPEC 2020 Energized Community Grant and to declare an emergency, offered by Mrs. Downhour, second by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Ms. Downhour.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 65-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 65-20. Discussion, Ms. Downhour.
I'll save it for the next motion.
Any discussion on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. James,
Yes.
Mr. Matlin,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover,
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton,
Yes.
and Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Ms. Downhour?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 65-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 65-20. Discussion, Ms. Downhour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This resolution is to authorize the city to enter into a grant agreement with NOPEC. This is an opportunity for us to receive money from NOPEC in the form of a grant, and it is based on the number of subscribers that we have with NOPEC. And as we discussed in finance, this money will be potentially, at least right now, it's targeted for replacing the boiler in the police headquarters building.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Downhour. Further discussion on the motion to pass? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone, so we'll unmute everyone and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. James,
Yes.
Mr. Matlin,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover,
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton,
Yes.
and Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 65-20 passes 9-0. Are there further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the third reading of temporary ordinance 6-20.
And an ordinance amending the zoning map for the 12.646 acres tract parcel number 0534000700 behind 2535 East Main Street, offered by Mr. McDaniel, second by Mr. Stoughton.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President. This ordinance will require a public hearing. Therefore, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council place on the table ordinance temporarily numbered 6-20.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place upon the table temporary ordinance 6-20. A motion to table is not debatable. I've unmuted everyone. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. James,
Yes.
Mr. Matlin,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover,
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton,
Yes.
and Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Mrs. Teener.
Temporary ordinance 6-20 has been placed upon the table with a vote of 9-0. We have no ordinances for second or first reading tonight. Are there further ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to tabled legislation. Is there any action on tabled legislation this evening? I see no one attempting to gain the floor, so we will move on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business this evening anyone would like to discuss? I see Mr. McDaniel. Go ahead, sir. Oh, nothing? Okay, I'm sorry. Anyone else have unfinished business? If not, then I would like to just briefly talk about our go forward plan for meetings of finance and city council, at least. For those of you who were able to see the governor's press conference today or who saw the news media coverage after the fact, we're beginning to slowly reopen Ohio as it stands now. Businesses that are allowed to operate have to operate under several guidelines, and this will include those that are opening up Friday and then next Monday and then 2 weeks from Thursday as those dates all continue to roll out. And those guidelines include continued social distancing and includes that in a room where people would be permitted at perhaps a larger rate, or number that no more than 50% of what is permitted by fire code should be present in that room. We know, based on our previous experience in our meeting right prior to us transitioning to virtual meetings, that we can fit a very few people outside of city administration and city council into the room. In fact, we had the room set so specifically to ensure 6-foot social distancing the last time that we know that it included a couple members of the administration, the 5 opponents, and the 2 proponents from the developer, and that was it. That maxed out the room. And so given that, and given the fact that we have a number of public hearings that we now need to set, one of which I do believe will entice folks both for and against to come out, I want to just be very, I guess, deliberate and intentional about how we try to move forward to schedule the meeting. So my recommendation is that on May 4th, 1 week from today, given the fact that our meeting schedule is altered due to the Memorial Day holiday, on May 4th, we meet here once again virtually for finance and for city council. On May 18th, we'll have some additional information about how things have been going and whether or not we're seeing rises in some of the numbers, given the fact that things are opening back up, or a continued leveling off or decrease. And so on May 18th, it is possible that we may attempt to meet in person with no public allowed. Again, we would stream this out as we always do. They would be able to see and hear via that, but would not be permitted in the room with us if we were to meet in person. And then on June 8th, it would be my recommendation that we hold an in-person meeting and that we hold all of the public hearings that we need to have scheduled, only one of which, again, do I believe is anyone going to show up to that would take up any amount of time. And we will set the room so that social distancing can continue to be observed. And we will likely, if the crowd grows, do some crowd control where people are spaced out 6 feet outside of the room as sort of a holding area, and then be permitted to come in one at a time as someone finishes their comments. They would leave, and the next person then would come in to keep the numbers in the room down. And so that's sort of the recommendation I would like to go on. If we were to do that, we would need to schedule the public hearings. And by that, I mean, put them on the schedule, establish the date at our meeting on May 4th. That would allow for the 30 days that is required to occur before our June 8th meeting. And so that's kind of the plan and the idea. Next meeting, next week virtual. The meeting after that, we'll see in person, perhaps with no public, or perhaps virtually once again like this. And then on June 8th, a in-person meeting and the public hearings that we need to get scheduled and get completed. So with that, I want to open it up and hear your thoughts and comments about, that's a great plan. Boy, that really stinks. We're not going to do that. What, anyone want to comment on what we're doing? I see Miss Downhour's hand, and I will unmute you. Please. I don't think I did it quite yet. Oh, wait. There you go.
So what's really behind trying to meet in person on the second meeting in May? If we're not going to, if it's just going to be us, I guess I'm not seeing the advantage versus having the virtual meeting, because I think this is extremely effective. I know it's not great because the public can't be in attendance, but if they're not going to be in attendance anyways on the second meeting in May, then why do we worry about it?
Sure.
I guess.
Well, and that's a great question. I guess in my mind, it gives us the opportunity to return to some sense of normalcy before we hold those public hearings then at our next meeting. But if the desire of council is to meet virtually for that second meeting in May, we surely can do that, and reduce the opportunity for us to be near anyone else, at least until that June 8th meeting. So I don't have an issue with that if that's the direction we want to head. Are there others who'd like to chime in and and talk. Yeah, let's have the second meeting in May virtually. Let's meet publicly, but with no public. Anyone want to?
Hey, Dave.
Yes, go ahead, Orman.
This is Orman. Yeah, just real quick. I kind of like the approach that you're taking here, and it does seem that there is some value in communicating to the public that we are attempting to return to normalcy, just so you get a sense of how things are going statewide over the span of the last 4 to 5 days. The rate of increase in new infections has hovered between 2 and 3%. We did have a statistical blip over the span of the last 2 weeks because of very serious outbreaks in 2 prisons, one in Marion and one in Pickaway County. But aside from that, the overall statewide trends in changes in infections has been pretty modest. So I think the governor is taking a very measured approach. And I think that the direction that you're trying to head city council is pretty solid.
Thank you, Orman. I appreciate that. And thanks for the information regarding kind of where we're at from a statewide standpoint. I'd like to hear from others, whether you want to try to get together or, yeah, Jack, I see your hand there. Go ahead, Mr. Matlin.
Is there opportunity to find a bigger venue just for the public hearing? For instance, I don't know what it called, like the Crossroads Center. So not that we could have more people, but just so we could spread out better.
Well, that would allow us to have more people because we could, meet that 6-foot distancing guideline, and it would increase the floor space to make that happen. So I think that's something we can check into. I imagine there is typically a cost associated with Crossroads, but they may be willing to help us out. We'll just have to see. Would the clerk be willing to check in on that for us here over these next couple of days? I see her shaking her head yes. So we'll check. And if others have another idea of where we could go that may not, cost anything, I don't have a problem with that either for the public hearing. Yes, I see Mr. James. I'll unmute you.
I'm okay with it either way. I think somewhat of a return to normalcy is not a bad idea. You could always change your mind leading up to that meeting on the 18th and change the venue if you had to.
Yeah, and we won't need to change the 18th venue. We would need to do it for June 8th for the public hearing. So if we were to meet in person on May 18th, we would do that in chambers.
Right.
And
That's
then,
fine.
yeah, and then on the 8th, we would see, and Carrie Woody has texted and suggested we could perhaps check OUL as well as a possible location if we wanted to look elsewhere. Anyone else want to? I see Ms. Nettles wants to say something. Yes, please. Let me unmute you. I'm trying, but it's not working. Go ahead and try to unmute yourself. There you go, Tricia.
Yeah, maybe check with the county on the Liberty Center.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Clerk can perhaps contact the commissioners as well. That'd be good. Thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts or ideas? So we'll play it by ear then. No matter what, May 4th, we'll meet virtually. And then we'll kind of see next week if there's any information we have about the potential for a different location for June 8th and what we may want to try to do for that meeting between in May. Yes, Ms. Downhour.
Mr. President, I think Ms. Bobbitt had something.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get down to Melody. Was that what you wanted to say, Holly?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Bobbitt, hold on. Let me try to unmute you. Are you trying to unmute yourself and I'm remuting you? Because I'm not having any luck unmuting you. Okay, I'm going to unmute everybody. Melody, I'm not sure I can hear you yet. Melody, try to unmute yourself, Melody.
Hello?
Yes, I hear you. Go ahead. You just, I think you muted yourself again. We had you, Melody, and now we don't have you. I'm not sure why my unmute button's not working, but you got to unmute yourself, Melody. She's working
Can
on.
you hear me now?
Yes, don't touch anything.
I wasn't.
Okay, go ahead.
Now I forget what I was going to say. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, help us. All right, go ahead.
So we do have Olivedale. I mean, that's larger than the chamber, than our council chambers.
That's true.
I probably on the May 18th. I like Orman's his he's ready to get out there. Well, I'm not quite ready to get out there, so probably on May 18th, I will be working virtually.
Okay.
Okay.
And we may continue to hold that meeting virtually. We'll just kind of see how we go as we get there. So if we know you're going to be virtual one way or another, that may impact the direction we decide to go.
Oh, really?
Probably not, but maybe.
Okay. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Melody. Anybody else want to chime in here? So it sounds like everyone is, at least that's had opportunity to say something, on board with us trying to schedule the public hearing for June 8th. We'll look for a venue. We'll be back here next week on May 4th virtually, and we'll figure out that May 18th meeting in one way or another. Regardless of what we do, the public would only be able to access it via Spectrum and online viewing, whether we do it here virtually or whether we do it in council chambers, I think, before we open back up and do something a little different for that public hearing. So that'll be the plan as we go forward. And if you have questions or thoughts, please feel free to shoot me an email or text, and we'll continue forward. Okay, anyone else have unfinished business this evening? All right, I don't see anyone attempting to gain the floor. And so does anyone have new business this evening? Anything they want to talk about? I see Miss Tina up there. Please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just wanted to, I wasn't able to go last Friday. I had to work, unfortunately. And I wanted to thank the community for coming out for the graduates, 2020 graduation class. I want to thank Interface. I know there were people that posted online, parents, but Mayor Scheffler has put it on his website. And if you need to go see it, Interface did a great job. It was really a touching video. And I'm glad the community came out, because these kids don't know, no prom, no graduation for right now, but the schools have scheduled June and July. So, I think it's a great thing that they're doing, and they're a little kind of confused. The school just kind of stopped, and they didn't get to say goodbye to people. And it's really hard on them, though. But I wanted to thank everybody in Interface, like I say, and Mayor Scheffler for putting that on your website.
Thank you, Ms. Teener. Yes, that was very good. And it is certainly a challenging year for those seniors who are going to miss out on, their lasts of sort of everything. So appreciate you bringing that up. Anyone else have new business this evening they'd like to discuss? Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone attempting to gain the floor. We'll move on then and ask that the clerk read our upcoming meeting schedule.
Upcoming regular session of council, May 4th at 6:30 p.m. The meeting following May 18th at 6:30 p.m. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Finance Committee, May 4th at 6 p.m. Via Zoom. Water Pollution Control, May 13th at 8 a.m. at the Water Pollution Control Conference Room. Finance Committee, May 18th at 6 p.m. Location to be determined, or have we decided that will, no, that was location to be determined. Safety, May 22nd at 7:30 a.m. at City Hall, 1897 Conference Room. And finally, the Code Enforcement and Zoning meeting, June 1st at 8 a.m. at the City Hall, 1897 Conference.
Thank you, Clerk Sandy. And we'll just mention, as we see some of these regularly scheduled committee meetings, we'll leave it to the committee chairs at this point as things begin to open back up as to whether you're going to hold those meetings or not. Certainly in some of those places, there's plenty of space to distance. And what I imagine in some of those early meetings may not be a ton of public. And so I think you're good to continue forward with those should you choose to hold them. I know we had canceled sort of through April, so we'll leave it to committee chairs for May. Do we have any bills this evening? Sorry.
That was me. I muted myself. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
There are none to be presented.
Excellent. Is there a need for an executive session this evening? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. Before we do so, let me just once again sort of get the verbal permission of those who had legislation tonight to allow the clerk to type your name into that legislation. And we're continuing to look at other options with one more virtual meeting. We may just do it this way. But I know Holly had legislation that passed. You're okay with the typing of your name in as your signature? Yes. Here. And Mr. Stoughton, I think were you on that legislation? It was Miss Bobbitt. It was Miss Bobbitt.
I'm fine.
Okay. So we will do that as we go forward. And with that, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. We'll look forward to seeing you back here next Monday at 6 p.m. Have a great week.